Welcome to the Sober Unicorn. We are a gay-hosted, all-inclusive podcast about sobriety and addiction recovery for the LGBT plus community and all of our allies. I am your host, Holden, and thank you for joining us today. Hey, it's Holden, and I am an alcoholic. Today, I am being joined by Shannon.
Hi, Holden. How are you?
Good. How are you doing today, Shannon?
I'm well. Thank you.
Good. Well, I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so happy to have you. We actually connected on Instagram, I would say in the first few weeks of me starting the account, and it's been a blessing.
Oh, well, thanks. I feel the same way. Thank you. That's nice.
Thank you. Well, why don't you tell everybody your sobriety date and kind of what your drug of choice was?
Sobriety date was April 14th, 2014. So I'm coming up on 8 years sober. My drug of choice, that's interesting because I didn't really say no to a lot of things, but I would say my drug of choice was probably alcohol, pills, opioids, cocaine, Molly, ecstasy. I wasn't really too picky. If it was in front of me, I would do it, sadly enough. But
yeah. I when people say that, I say, well, your drug of choice was yes.
That is correct, yes.
So I never really turned anything down.
The only thing that I will say, I knew that, and I'm so grateful for this. There was always, I think, an angel watching over me. I knew that if I ever picked up a needle and did any sort of like heroin, things like that, any sort of injections, I knew that would be the end of me. And so for some reason, even though I was still using daily and abusing, there was always that one line that I would never cross because I knew that that's something I couldn't come back from. So,
well, that's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I think that because ultimately deep down I wanted to get sober and I knew I wanted to, and I knew that would be the kiss of death.
Yes, so. For sure. So I know what's kind of odd is through our conversations via Instagram, you seem like this crazy over the top extrovert that could go to any social setting and just throw himself in there. But apparently that's not the case.
No, I'm a good actor. Yes, I've learned how to act really well. Yeah. I suffer from extreme social anxiety.
Well, and what's crazy, most of us, when we use, it's to kind of, it allows us to become these social butterflies because we're under the influence. So getting sober, how did you transition into like being able to be social in these social settings without under the influence?
Oh, that took years of practice. Kind of go back a little bit. I didn't do AA. I never did the 12-step program because I knew that what I had to deal with and the topics that I had to, my demons were so personal. And also with that social anxiety thing, walking into a room and saying, hi, my name is Shannon, I'm an alcoholic drug addict, and then tell my truth I would rather stand in front of a crowd completely naked, honest to God. So I knew that the way that I would benefit and that I would get the most out of it was seeing a therapist. So we did one-on-one for 2.5 years every week. And the downside is, though, in hindsight, I wish that I would have probably learned some tools because even though I was taking care of the emotional side, which is why I was using to kind of escape my demons, I never really understood or got to talk to anybody else to now, how do you go back into living a life? Because you and I both know the reality of it is, or at least with me, the person that I was, I had to allow that person to die so I can be rebirthed into the person that I am today. And when you spend like 30 some years, I told you I was going to cry, finish the tissue. When you spend 30 some years living your life a certain way, meaning around your friends and going to social things, bars, and of course, if you're doing something drug-wise, typically you're around people that are like-minded, right? So how do you give all that up? So I didn't know how. So instead of stop going to bars, I would still go, but instead of drinking alcohol, I would drink Red Bull. Well, let me just get jacked up on all kinds of caffeine. That's going to help the anxiety, right? It's just, so in hindsight, I'm like, what was I thinking? But I learned how to say no, and I realized that's okay. Bars aren't a place that I need to be. Social settings, of course, we're talking before COVID. I've been at museums. My husband obviously is an artist. So we do a lot of other things. We're big foodies. So, we just kind of we just pivoted a little bit, And along that, got to meet people like you, and I've got to meet some really great people that are more supportive and not so I don't know, a bad influence, I guess. But it's
Yeah.
hard.
People that aren't so jaded.
Yes. Yeah, and also in the gay world, it's very hard. The gay world, as you and I both know, it can be tough. And you have to kind of keep up this facade of like everything is great and your physique and you have to do this and say the right things. And it's all a show because if really you talk to a lot of people deep down inside, we're all insecure to a certain level. Um, you know, I just think that I've learned through time how to deal with it a little bit better, I guess.
Yeah, I know with Facebook, social media, and everything that kind of puts ourselves back into that like really bad self pity mindset. Because, yeah, I can go on one vacation, but I stretch those photos into 2 or 3 months of posts so people
Yeah.
continuously think that I'm just like living this life when in reality I'm like at home, depressed, like wanting to just sleep myself away. But it's because of so many norms that we have been pushed into as a category in the community because most of us don't have kids. Most
Yeah.
of us will have a dual home income, and we have all this expendable money. And so gays are so known for having these lavish vacations and lavish lives and parties and
Yes. And that, you know, that's where, so, you know, I'm a hairdresser, you know, in my real life outside of my makeup thing on Instagram. And it's something that's came naturally to me. People were always like, you know, how do you know what you know? And I think sometimes you just have a talent. My husband's the same way with art. What I wasn't ready for as being 21 years old and then, you know, living and working in Great Falls, Virginia, which is kind of a upper end as far as like income goes, to making all this money. You know, here I was a 20-some-year-old kid, like getting cash hand over fist because of tips and things. So, and I was such a giving person that, of course, you want a bag of cocaine? I got you. You know, rounds are on me. Who wants a shot? I mean, that's, to be quite honestly, my insecurity was so bad. I felt that I wasn't enough. So either I had to buy you something or do your hair. You know, it's like what I was presenting, I felt like was never enough. So when I had the money, I felt like I could, you know, be the guy that would like, you know, throw
make
it
it rain.
around, make it girl. I made it rain. I made it storm, and then it dried up. That's the sad part. And then became a desert because I spent it all on drugs. But you know,
That was, yeah, that was me. It was this internalized insecurities that I mean I hang around with straight people because I've never really been accepted within the community due to me being a heavier set person. And so it like I would put on this facade of like this ultra queeniness to allow the straight people to make fun of me, to accept me into their groups. And so it's
yeah.
like just because I hated myself, I allowed myself to become like this two-faced bitch and just to feel some sort of acceptance in some kind of group.
I mean, you know, I had my, you know, I always said that I had two sides. I had the Shannon, I had the Sharon. Sharon, no one likes Sharon much. So Shannon was the person that would get up every day, take care of responsibilities. You know, I bought my house at 24, which is a huge thing. You know, that I have a lot of animals. So I would kind of do the day to day. Thank God for pain pills because that's what got me out of bed because I'd be drinking all night long. So I would kind of do my best to get through the day. But the minute the day was over with, I was at the liquor store buying the largest bottle of vodka or wine. And that's what I would take to bed with me.
Yeah, so I know you said that like your anxiety, social anxiety, you did all these things to kind of make up for it. So now that you're sober, you're 7 years in, when you build these relationships with people in your world, making new friends and stuff, do you find that these relationships that you build now are just a lot stronger and a lot more genuine?
Um, yes, because I'm being honest for the first time. Again, with the whole like facade and the gate, you know, I never let people know the truth about me. And you know, when you come in, you're a hairdresser, and you have to, you know, talk to somebody. And if you think about it, I am on rotation every hour. I have to tell the story over again, right? So I get really good at storytelling. So when I now that I talk to clients or I'm around people, you know, that's kind of like the first thing that I talk about is my sobriety, and usually kind of feel them out. And sometimes people are shocked that I'm so open. Some people are horrified, makes some people uncomfortable because they feel like then they have to justify everything. Well, I did go out last night, but I don't go out all the time. I just had a drink. I don't care what you drank. I'm an alcoholic. I'm just telling you, girl. That's all. I don't need to know about your history. But yeah, I think they're more genuine because I'm more genuine. I'm more open and honest, and it's not always easy, but I mean that's how you build a good relationship, friendship or otherwise. I think.
Yeah. So, of course, now that other friends are out of the way, I don't want to bring up the subjects, but of course, it's kind of a deep subject for a lot of us as family. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that you had some issues with your mother growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think that contributed to your addiction? And now that you're sober, has that relationship gotten any better?
So I was wow, here's a story. So I was adopted when I was little. I was about a year old, and my birth mother was an addict. She married more than 7 times. All of her children have different fathers. I had 2 older sisters, and I was lucky enough to get adopted. I was brought to Virginia, and my adopted mother's American Indian, right? So if anyone can see, I'm a white Caucasian man, and my mom is American Indian. So it was kind of like a secret for some reason in my family. And then when I got older, and my mother told me that I was adopted, and I was like, "Duh, I can see. We're not the same color." Um, then it became like, who is my birth mother and all that sort of stuff. So when I did find her, because I think it's a natural curiosity to figure out where you come from, uh, when she found out that I was gay, she basically said that she didn't want anything else to do with me, to never contact her again. So I was rejected 2 times. And the worst part about that is growing up in a very Southern Baptist household, I couldn't come home and tell my adopted mother, hey, my birth mother rejected me because I was gay, because, uh, I couldn't tell her either. You know, it was a hard place to be. Um, Later in life, I did reconnect with my biological mother, and we have a okay relationship, but we just kind of keep it very, very much on the outskirts, just very superficial. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, that sort of stuff. With my adopted mother being so religious, I don't, I don't think that she's ever been 100% accepting, but I feel that she's doing the best that she can.
Which is, I mean,
So,
which what our parents can do. It's we never ask our parents to understand what we're choosing this lifestyle or not choosing, but why we don't want them to understand. We just want them to respect us and accept us.
yeah, exactly. And again, being raised in a very religious household, I was taught very young, gay is bad, sex is bad. There's all of these things in my religion that I was raised with that, just made me feel really guilty and really shameful and embarrassed. And yeah, I didn't really have an outlet as a young kid to kind of express, wow, I'm feeling this way, or what does this mean, or why am I attracted to men, or, that was never allowed to be talked about.
And how did that play a role into your addiction? And how do you use those situations in the past actually to help you stay sober?
Uh, those experiences in the past, I think, taught me that you have to have an open conversation, no matter whether it's painful or not. You just have to be honest. The honesty is always the best policy. And I know that's overrated and overplayed and everyone says it, but it is the truth. If you can't be honest with yourself and say, you know what, hey, I have issues, whether it's mental health, depression, addiction, and you want to better yourself, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I will say what I've learned in life is that sometimes when you start out on this journey, people that you're around don't want you to get better. They don't want you to grow. Because if you're growing and changing and evolving and they're not, then all of a sudden the balance is off. And I felt that a lot the last couple of years with my family, my adopted family. Um, I don't know. I was a people pleaser before. I was a person that would always say yes. I just wanted people to like me, regardless of what that would do to me, whether it would harm me or. So when I started putting up boundaries and creating this life that I'm proud of, Um, I don't know. I don't think that they like that very much. So we don't really have very much of a contact.
Yeah, I mean, which I can understand to a point because I don't have any zero contact with my father. It's been going on 16 years. Um, and it wasn't due to the sexuality, but there was a lot of addiction involved when it came to methamphetamine and alcoholism. And sometimes all you could do is be honest with yourself. And as long as you are being true to who you are, no matter what issues your family has with that, that's on them. That's their problems. That's not your problems. Because as long as you know who you are and you're just being the best you possible, that's all you can do. That's all you can control in life.
You know, RuPaul. I love RuPaul quotes. RuPaul says it best: "What other people think of you is none of your business." And that is something that I really have had to digest and really kind of understand because it is, like I always say, my husband hates chocolate. Who hates chocolate? Chocolate's like the best thing, right? I'm chocolate. I'm not for everybody, apparently. Some people love chocolate, some people don't. And that's okay. I'm not here to make everyone happy. Like, I like me today. I woke up, I put a smile on my face, put on my little cute tie, came to see you, and we're having this conversation. I don't, it's like I'm good. I like
Yeah.
me.
So
So if you like me, then that's an extra one for me. I'm good with that. But yeah.
yes, and I mean, just by the way, your outfit is adorable. I always be
Thanks.
part of it.
Thank you. I'm like an anchor man. Sweatpants from the waist down. No,
So were you and your husband married in your addiction?
mm, good question. My husband and I dated. He was a tattoo artist. I went and got a tattoo, and that's how we met. We dated for about 3 or 4 months, and after that time, the facade starts to kind of fall, and you're starting to show your true colors. And he was like, "You are crazy. You are a raging alcoholic, and I can't do this." So he broke up with me. Yeah. He did the traditional, came to my house, knocked on the door, opened the door, and the minute I saw him, it was like, yeah, it's over. So we broke up. And the crazy part about Billy and I is that we live in the same neighborhood. Yeah, how's that for crazy? We literally live 2 minutes apart and have our entire life. My husband's 9 years younger than me. So I always say when I bought my house in 2001, I would drive by and see him at the bus stop, which seems a little creepy, but you know what I mean. He was getting equity on a house his senior year, didn't even know he was going to own a house one day. But yeah, I mean, while we were apart, I my addiction kicked into overdrive. I was going out to the clubs all the time. I was kind of, trying to live this very burn the candle at both ends lifestyle. And I ended up meeting and dating someone who was worse than me. So, in every sense of the word, addiction wise, that is. So, when you get to see it firsthand, and now you have to be the responsible one because you can't be a falling apart shit show while your partner is literally laying on the ground. So, I got to really see what other people saw, and it was terrifying, and it was
Mm.
infuriating, and it was frustrating. And I understand now in past relationships, just like with Billy, what he saw, and he was like, I don't want that. I'm not gonna jump into that hot mess. So we did come back around. Ironically enough, one day fate pulled us back together again, and he said, I miss you. I think that this could go forward. You need to make some changes. And I definitely agreed. And we started dating soon after that. I ended a relationship, and Billy and I got back together. But then again, you try to pretend like you're still the same person and do the same things, right? Because it's routine and it's structure. You go to the bar, you go to the pub, you have a drink, you do a shot. And the place where my husband likes to hang out, it was like Cheers. So everyone knew everyone. And it was a very welcoming environment. And he's giving me power right now. So it was nice to kind of go around and be around people. but yeah, so that was a place that he would hang out, and I would like to go there too, and start to be friends with people. But it was a bar, so of course I would drink, and sometimes there were good nights, and sometimes there were not so good nights. But it became obvious that I had a drinking problem, and it did come to a head. It came to a nasty evening that Billy basically said, "You're going to die, and if you don't get help, I'm out." So I had a choice, and he wasn't kidding, and I could see why, because it was that was my bottom, and to think that he actually stuck around after that, because there was so many dark, deep secrets that I was holding, and it was like spinning all these plates in the air, like trying to kind of keep up with everything and make everyone happy. I was this person to work, I was this person to my family, I was this person to my husband, I was this person to this group of friends. It was hard. It was hard to kind of keep all those things going at one time, and I finally just surrendered to it and said, I've been pretending being an adult all this time. I don't know what I'm
Yeah,
doing,
and
and I need
exactly.
that.
I think finally asking for help is one of the biggest things, or admitting to yourself
Yeah.
that you need help, because we think, especially as gay people that go through a lot, we want to feel that we're very powerful, like that we got shit handled, and that
Yeah.
we're in control of our feelings. I think finally when it gets that rock bottom and we finally admit to ourselves we need help, as gay men we're good at swallowing everything but pride. And
Yeah.
pride is one of the most difficult things for us to swallow down. So now that as you said, you kind of have to kill your old self in order
Yes.
to move forward. So of course you were kind of hitting a rock bottom in the beginning stages of y'all's relationship. So has your relationship improved becoming this new person?
Our relationship has improved because I did a podcast a while ago, and I think this part got me in trouble. But this is the truth, and I'm not going to say it again. And some people might not like to hear it. Billy was the first person that made me responsible, or held me responsible. My family saw the train wreck that I was: pills, alcohol, sex. And it's hard when you see your family and you go back, like when you get sober and you look back on life and you're like, wow, I was a mess. I was screaming for help without ever opening my mouth. If I saw me, I would say that guy was in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand why nobody wanted to come and help. Maybe that's my journey. Maybe my journey was figuring it out on my own, because I feel and doing a good job of it. But it's hurtful when you think that you've given so much to so many people and they're supposed to love you and be your family. And then you look back and you say, didn't care.
Yeah, well, it's not so much care. It's they're like, oh well, he's on his own. I don't want to burden myself with his problems.
Yeah.
And
It was hard.
yeah,
It's
and I think for
eh,
Billy, I think the great thing, like you said, he's the first one that held you responsible. Um, I wouldn't say I don't disagree with you, but I would say he more helped you look at yourself in the mirror.
yeah.
And because that's one thing we always avoided was looking at ourselves in the mirror and being happy with who we were. So I think now that somebody that you actually liked or loved at that point and saw a future with, holding that mirror in front of you and being like, look at yourself, this is not the person you should be, is a huge wake up call.
And the crazy part about this gay world, and you touched on it earlier about you have to look a certain way or you have to be a certain way. What people forget, we all are aging daily. This hair color is fake. This beard is dyed. These brows are tinted. This face is Botox. This is not. This is fake. All right. This is an illusion. So you can gain weight, lose weight, work out, do whatever, but it's your heart and soul that matters. We're all going to go old and get wrinkly one day. And, I call it the 80-20 rule. I would love to have arm candy, but he's as dumb as a rock. So I got 20%, but the 80% sucks. I would rather have 80 and 20. No one's ever going to be 100, right? There's always going to be 20% that you want to change. And that's with, even with myself. So I think people need to stop looking at just the facade and start looking internally, because, like I said, beauty fades. As
Exactly.
Judge Judy would say, beauty fades, dumb as
Miss
forever.
Forever,
So.
yes. So I know in your early days of sobriety, you dealt with death. So kind of, I know a lot of people new in sobriety kind of hit these really, as soon as they think that they're, oh my god, I'm sober, I'm doing great, something happens, and many times it is the loss of a loved one. So take me
Mhm.
through how you coped with that, and what tools did you use to not pick up that drink or drug dealing with the loss of a loved one, and multiple.
um, that's a good question, because I think that a lot of people might need to hear this, because especially in the world that we live in now, death is happening so fast and so frequently that it's almost rapid fire. So with me, my story goes, in 2017, my father passed away in September. And my father and I kind of like, he did not have a good relationship. My father was an addict. He left when I was 13, and I never saw him again. He lived 20 minutes down the road, but no phone calls, no nothing. So again, this rejection thing is kind of like a common theme in my life. And when he died, I was like, good riddance. I wish him dead every day, I'll be honest with you. That did no joy for me, by the way, in hindsight. Um, I didn't want to go to his funeral. And Billy said, you need to go. Just to go. You haven't seen him. You've been carrying this weight. You need to just show up. And another little side note is, during this entire time, I hadn't spoken to anyone in my family, my nieces, my nephews, my brother, my mother, for about a year, because I needed to, like I said, let that part of me die. I needed to just like power down, get my stuff together, and then come back a new person. And I was in that growth process when my father died. So now I'm thinking, oh my God, I have to see my family and all these people that I haven't seen, and I'm seeing them at a funeral, and it's my father. It's very, there's a lot of stuff for an anxiety person to kind of like deal with. But Billy was like, you have to go. So I showed up, and the first person that I saw was my niece, Roxanne. And Roxanne, she's my oldest niece. I have 4 nieces and nephews, 2 girls, 2 boys. And if I was to ever have a kid, I think that she would probably have been it. She became a hairstylist like me. She lived in the neighborhood next to me. She was a mom of 2. The reason that we have pink everything in unicorns is because she loved unicorns and loved the color pink. So when I saw her at my father's funeral, I hadn't seen her in over a year, and I gave her the big hug. And you say all the things that you want to, right, at funerals and at weddings. I love you. So great to see you. In my case, I was like, I'm sorry. I was an asshole as an uncle. I'm trying to make myself better. Go to my father's funeral, and I this to the point where they're like, does anyone want to say any last words? So of course I said internally that this was my last chance. Like, body's there, it's about to be done. This is either make it or break it. I literally felt like someone was pushing me towards the front. And now I'm standing in front of everyone. My father's behind me. And I said, I just here to say one thing, that is, I forgive you. And at that moment, this cross that I've been carrying around since I was a child lifted off my back, and I felt like I could fly around the cemetery. I felt like I'd made peace with my father. He's gone. The chapter's closed. I've learned my lessons, and now I can continue to grow, heal, and move on. 6 days later, I was getting a tattoo, ironically enough, and I got a phone call, and it's my sister-in-law is screaming in the phone, and I knew someone died, but I didn't know who. And I said, who? Just tell me the name. And she said, Roxanne. It didn't make sense. A mother of 2, 27 years old. How do you not relapse after that? In hindsight, I did everything wrong. I I tried to help my family be there for everyone, but it just wasn't making sense to me. Like, how? And then over time, we got the toxicology report and found out that she died of a lethal drug overdose. And I know my niece. That's not her. She has two kids. Something didn't make sense. So, when you're dealing with a young loss like that, and your father just died or was buried 6 days earlier, nothing makes sense. You feel guilty to smile. You feel guilty to be alive. You ask, why not me? I've used so many drugs. But, um, that allowed me to become who I am today because if I could survive that, I can survive anything. And I wasn't allowing myself to heal properly. And you and I talked about this, but my niece died on October 1st and October 30th because I wasn't dealing with stress. I wasn't sleeping right. I wasn't eating. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't allowing myself any joy because I felt guilty. I fell down a flight of stairs and I broke my leg. So that was karma saying you need to sit your ass down and deal with your emotions. And I shattered both bones below my kneecap. And I remember when I fell down the stairs and I landed, I was like, "What just like you're confused because you're like, what am I doing at the bottom of these stairs?" And my husband comes out of the bathroom and he's like, "What happened?" I said, "Oh, I fell." He's like, "Well, get up." And what's there's like sand in my knee. And sure enough, called 911, went to the hospital, and on Halloween, I had my first of 4 surgeries. And I woke up with an external cage. I shattered bones, wound vacs, 12 screws, 2 metal plates, and now I couldn't walk. So you're like, oh, and on top of that, what pain medication would you like? That's something awesome to say to them. And he needed it, right? So now I needed to have pain medication. And so that was an honest conversation with my doctors, with my husband, with everyone, because I was an addict. I wanted the escape. I wanted to get out of my mind. I wanted to float off into Never Never Land. But I also knew that that was not who I wanted to be anymore. So finding the balance. So, you come home, I was in bed for 3 months, and we all know what quarantine's like. So imagine just laying in your bed for 3 months, only stuck with your emotions. You can't think of anything else except all of your pain. Physical therapy was my only outlet. Me and the 60-year-old woman at 9 o'clock in the morning doing our leg lifts. It was great. But I used my addiction as my superpower. And I said, instead of using it for drugs, I'm going to shift my addiction and I'm going to learn how to walk again. Not only am I going to learn to walk again, I'm going to walk and I'm going to stand for 8 hours doing hair and I'm going to travel and I'm going to do everything that I want to do. No one's going to tell me no. And so I started to fight.
Yeah.
And when you're going through physical therapy and you're trying to like break up, move your leg and you have all this, things that just haven't worked for so long, the pain was intolerable. Like he would push my foot into my chest and I would hold on to the wall and tears would be running on my eyes. He was like, well, next time you come in, double up on your Percocet. I'm like, I told you I take Advil. So he thought I was on pain medication. So I was like, I was the guy going in there. They were like, wow, you're the man. You do this, without any sort of medication. So I wanted the pain actually, which is weird. I never understood why people cut themselves, like why people were cutters. I have clients whose children have dealt with that. I now understand because when my leg was hurting so bad and I was learning how to walk again, I couldn't think about my heart too much. I couldn't think about my pain because that was overpowering. But once I started getting better with that, then I had to start dealing with my emotional side. And it was a process. It was a process.
And I think that, I mean, something or somebody pushed you down those stairs to
Yes.
um so you could actually take that break and just process everything you just dealt with. I mean, from the loss of your father that you hadn't spoke to in a minute to the loss of your niece that you've had finally reconnected with,
Yeah.
which is very difficult. I mean, I'm in the funeral industry and understand the loss of anybody can be really traumatic and hard. So it's like when you dealt with that loss, like what did you do not to relapse?
I became angry. I'll be honest with you.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, but I became angry. I had to hate drugs so much and alcohol. Like I literally, you might be too young. You might be too young for this, young man. But when I was a kid in the 80s, we used to have Mr. Yuck stickers, and they were like neon green. Yes, he told you, no idea. For the older audience, people, you understand. It was a little green sticker. It was neon green, and it was a guy like, and it was like a Mr. Yuck sticker. So you knew that when you were like under the cabinet or whatever, cleaning products, and if you saw that, you knew it was poison. So I visually, mentally put Mr. Yuck stickers on everything. So I started hating it, started looking at it as toxic, started looking at it as venom. Why did you take my niece? What else are
Mhm.
you going to take from me? Why me? Why? And so I think that maybe the anger kind of helped get me over this hump. Now, like again, I would say it's not the best way to go about it, but that's what worked for me.
Yes, and I think over time, I think what especially when you broke your legs and you're in your bed for 3 months and allowed that time to process everything that went down, that anger probably shifted.
Yeah,
I mean, well, did it shift? I mean, at the end of that 3 months, when you actually had time to think, even though the loss of your niece was difficult, especially seeing what you saw in the toxicology report, did you finally say that it happened for a reason, or did you still have anger?
I'm still at anger.
Okay.
You know, when you I don't have kids, so I'm just going to say that these were like my children, right? And I always said, if anyone ever hurts them, I will kill them. You know, you say that if you hurt someone I love, especially a child, I will do what it takes to kill you. That's not where I was. You know what I mean? It's like I knew something was wrong. I knew that something did not add up. I knew that I knew that wasn't my niece. I knew that there was something else, and how do you had to figure that out, you know? And how do you figure that out, you know? And that was a process. It took us a while to kind of get down to the real reality of what happened. But through that time, I think that uh, you never have it under control, right? You're never fixed. You're always a work in progress. So you never say, "Oh yeah, I got it. I'm so." No, it's like every day is still a struggle. And my niece, I think that when I survived that and I realized that I had to learn how to walk again, which was very humbling, for someone like me who used to run around all over the place to be in a wheelchair or a walker. It's visually it's embarrassing for me. After a while, you don't care anymore. But it's just not the cuteness that I was trying to project. It was very humbling. Um, but again, it was my regrowth process. I really do believe, like you said, that I was at the bottom of that stairs to say, look, this is now the starting point, and now you will grow from here.
Hmm.
And I wish that I could have grown with my family. I wish we all could have done it together, but that's not how it worked out. And maybe that's just not the path that I'm supposed to take.
Yes, and I mean, as you said, you love RuPaul quotes, and RuPaul always says, as people in the community, we get to choose our family.
Yeah.
So you may have had a family, but it's not the normal nuclear family that we all know. But you had people surrounding you, your husband, and maybe a few friends that were that newfound family that stuck by your side.
Yeah. And
So
the few people that I do allow in my circle, I cherish them because I know that they're there because they want to be. I don't have to put on a show. I can put on my glasses, take out my contacts, be comfortable. I don't have to look a certain way or be a certain thing. I can just be Shannon. And I think that 45 years of my life, I finally realized that it is okay just to be me. you know,
exactly.
um, the it's interesting when you're an artist and you do things like you do someone's hair, right? So like you come to me, I do your hair, and then you have to have a certain level of confidence to say that I feel good about that you're walking out. And I love doing hair. Hair's always been my passion, but I wanted to try something different, and I've always wanted to try makeup. I was always very insecure, and this is where another part of my life pivoted, and this is how you and I became. When my little dog Louis, my little Chihuahua guy, when he passed away, he was 16, and he was like my little buddy. So think about 16 years, and I've been sober for almost 8. So he was there at the beginning of the crazy. And I wasn't the best dad, I'll be honest. There's moments when you're hungover and you think you should, you don't want to get out of bed, or you're looking for your drugs, or you got to go run to DC and sit in a parking lot. I mean, the things that I did, what was I thinking? But in hindsight, drugs were obviously driving me to do these things. When I got sober, Louis, because he's just a little Chihuahua, became my sidekick. We would go places together, do things together, and he was getting older. He was a product from a last relationship and also a last life. And when he passed away in September, I knew it was coming. I wasn't prepared for what was coming with it. And that was the end of all of that, the end of the friendships that were connected, the relationship that was connected with it. And we're in a pandemic and all these things, and you can't go out and be social, and it's hard to kind of talk to a therapist sometimes. So I was like, you know what, I need something to completely focus on. Like, I need something I don't want to work out. You don't want to go for walks. All you do is think. And I was really afraid that I was going to relapse. I was afraid that Louis' death was going to push me to a point that I was like, I just can't take anymore. And so I started doing makeup. And I didn't know anything about it. I kind of did because I've done it for Halloween, but I literally bought makeup palettes and prosthetics, and I locked myself in the bathroom, as we were talking earlier, for 5 to 7 hours. That's how long it takes. And just learned and just kind of gave myself the ability to just be creative. There's no limitations. And that helped me heal. But now I'm doing art, right? So now I'm insecure. I'm like, oh my God, I can't put this up on Instagram because of whatever, I see other people's stuff, and their stuff is amazing. And my stuff is, in my opinion, shit. Is it good enough? And then people like Stacy at Horror Hags on Instagram, like she started liking my stuff. And then I started getting a following, and it helped my confidence. And just like with anything, when you're starting out, you're going to have to have challenges. You're not going to be great at it. You're going to have to try, learn different things. But to have somebody like Horror Hags or Camera Ready, or you, or people to say, hey, that's really cool, or I like that, or you're doing a good job. It was just that little boost of confidence that I needed. Now I've become, in a very healthy way, addicted to it, because it is nice to kind of it's therapy for me. You lock yourself in a room and you can just kind of be creative and listen to music, as you and I both know. I love me some music. So yeah, it's been very therapeutic. But I will say Stacy at Horror Hags was a very good positive influence on my life, and I'm very grateful for her.
Yeah, and your makeup is killer. I mean, it. I mean, it would. I mean, actually, if you looked at some of his stuff, it looks like he got killed, but it
Yes, viciously.
it's really good, especially when I see those photos. It looks like somebody that was actually trained in that type of realm of
Wow.
makeup,
Thank you.
because it's really good. But
Thank
that's a whole nother episode, which you need to
you.
start doing on your own thing. But so let's change the subject to something positive.
Okay.
So I know sex for many of us in addiction is crazy, wild, kinky, just chaotic, and we have to redefine ourselves as a sexual being becoming sober, because many of us haven't. I mean, I still have not had sex sober in 5 years, well, except once, but that's here nor there. But yeah, one time. So I have, that's the thing. So how did you re-identify yourself as a sexual individual coming out of sobriety?
Ooh, that is a topic that I love to talk about, because it's such a big deal, right? I mean, we are conditioned at a young age that get the champagne and strawberries. Like, we are taught at a young age that that's kind of how you do it. You have a couple drinks, you get a little loose, you do your thing. So when you go from just being like, hey, me, to be like, hey, it's it's really weird because I wasn't used to it, and it took time. But the beautiful thing about it is, and I'm not trying to get graphic here, I think people can fill in the blanks. When you are sober, you are aware, you are you can participate, and it's with the right person, it can be beautiful. Sadly, when I grew up I graduated high school in 95, so I came out during like the AIDS pandemic and when that was coming out of the 80s into the 90s. So, sex was always talked about seedy and it's the gay thing. And, there was all of that was burned into my brain at a young age. So, and also being in a religious family, sex is something you don't ever talk about. So naturally, I think that I started going to the darker side of things because I thought through porn and what I've been exposed to, that's kind of how it was. I didn't realize for some reason that you can just have a normal sexual relationship. It takes practice, I'll say. It takes being comfortable in your own body. It's a beautiful thing. Sex is never anything that's negative. With the right person, but just like with anything, you can become a sex addict, which I feel that I was. I was addicted to a lot of porn. I was addicted to multiple situations. And I'm so grateful that I came out of that and I survived it, because I put myself in a lot of situations where in hindsight, I was like, that was a really, really bad decision.
No, for sure. I know that you said how we're kind of trained to drink a little bit to loosen you up. I mean, sometimes being loose in the gay world's a good thing, and it just takes that right person to do that. I think being present is the biggest thing because, at least for me, I suck out things with people to fill a void of love that I was missing for myself. And in reality, it was making it worse, especially you're drug induced, alcohol induced. You don't even know what's really going on. And most of the time, the next day, when you're coming down off of everything, you don't even remember the interaction.
Yeah,
And you're just like, oh shit, now this is missing out of my house, or this is missing. So
yeah,
it's especially when you can love yourself, be sober, and love the person that you're with, and you know that they love you back. A sexual experience is so much more meaningful
yeah,
than just getting, like, I mean, as RuPaul says, we're all squirrels just trying to get a nut. So I mean, it's much more than just getting that orgasm. It is about feeling appreciated, feeling loved, and having that true connection with that person.
yeah. And when I came out, again, it was a very different time because there was no gay youth groups or anything like that. It's the only place that you would see gay people in the 90s were at gay bars. And like, for instance, I don't know how familiar you're with DC, but DuPont Circle, it was like the perfect box. It's like you knew where you were in these walls, every place was gay, every place had a rainbow. And if you went beyond that, it was the straight world. So you stayed within your little grid, this little, 5-block radius, so I would go to bars. And of course, being a young twink, 18, 17 years old, 16 actually at my very beginning, I thought I was looking all adult and 21. I was a child. But when you act like an adult, right, and you go to adult places, you're expected to do adult things. And I wanted the alcohol, I wanted the attention because I wasn't getting that at school. I was being called the F word and all this sort of stuff. So when I go here, all of a sudden, everyone's like, hey, buy you a drink, you're cute. So my ego inflated. And then I found myself in situations that I wish I were never in. And the crazy part about addiction, which I'm sure your audience and you understand, it pushes you to do things that you normally wouldn't do. So even though I was sexually assaulted at this specific club, I knew that they would still let me in. and I wanted that alcohol and or drug, I still went. And that's where I started to say, well, I deserved it, because I knew what I was getting myself into. I knew what was going to happen when I got there. I knew when I went back to his house what he was going to expect. And this is the craziest thing. OJ Simpson, remember just a couple years ago or whatever, all of a sudden it was like the anniversary of that. The night that OJ Simpson's wife, Bronco, was going down the road and everyone was looking at the bar and everyone had their attention. I was at a date with an older gentleman that was close to 50, and he raped me that night. So watching all that OJ Simpson thing come back brought me right back to that night. And not only did he rape me, but he did it without a condom. So I was 17, thereabouts, and convinced that I was HIV positive. Had to go to the clinic, health clinic, give the fake name, do the whole thing that you heard of back in the day, find a ride there, then had to go back, wait 2 weeks, convinced that I had a death sentence, I was going to be rejected. So I had to go to school. I was in high school. So I had to act like I was normal. So I had to go to church on Sunday. And then I go back and I get my test result, and it said that I was negative. But that was traumatic, and I couldn't tell anyone. And so you start to find ways to escape. And that's when alcohol became more and more. And I went to college in Baltimore and Mount Vernon, and Mount Vernon is the gay area. So I could now, after I graduated high school, I could walk to a bar. And that was bad. That was a little too convenient.
Yes. I know many times that I've gone to clubs, I've been offered coke and all kinds of other stuff, and I wasn't raped that evening, by the grace of God, but I was actually slipped date rate drugs at a pool party one time, and thankfully there was other people at the party that took me home, took care of me, made sure I was okay. But it's if you're not aware of your surroundings and what's going on in a sober mindset, people can really take advantage of you because they are in it for their own selfish gain without any consideration of anybody else. And I know deep into our addiction, I was the same way. I was very in it for what I wanted. Um, as long as I got the drug, I didn't really care who I associated with, knowing that they were probably the worst people cooking meth at their house. And here I am
Yeah.
in this house. Like, what the hell am I doing there?
Yeah.
When I could go to jail for many, many years because of that. So, but I'm glad you're sober, girl.
Well, another thing is, because of fentanyl and all these things that are going on right now. I mean, let me just set a plain picture. I was at the Roxy in Manhattan, and I was going around talking to strangers in New York City to get cocaine. Instead, I got a bag of Molly. Didn't know it. Now, anyone that has ever used Molly, you use a little bit. I put a whole bag in the middle of my hand, and I snorted it thinking it was cocaine, and soon realized, as I felt like razor blades were going up my face, that was Molly, and I was up for 3 days. I drank a bottle of Jack Daniels. I mean, it's really amazing that I was still alive. So that's why, when I go now, I have this history line of seeing all these moments when I was like, should have been dead there. That could have been bad. I'm here for a reason, and I feel that whether it's my story that will help people, my business that my husband and I have been able to, create and build, there's been so many great things that came out of sobriety, so many proud things. And I'm not ashamed anymore. And if, people don't like my story, if I make you feel uncomfortable, then maybe you need to look at yourself. I'm just being me. But yeah, I'm definitely a survivor in a lot of ways.
Yes, and that is, and I mean, you are here for a reason. I mean, whether it's like you said, to share your story, to let anybody know out there that through midst of addiction, family passing, um, rape, I mean, everything that, like, no matter how bad it can get, there is still hope that you can get sober. I mean, you're 7 years in a happy marriage, building a business, building your own success in life. while being sober and able to mentally cope with everything that happened in the past without the
Yes.
use of drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. And also, with my line of work, uh, being a hairstylist, you see people every hour or whatever. So, I'm such a I'm sensitive, we'll say. uh it's hard. Conversations used to be like, what are you doing for their summer vacation, or where are your kids going to college? Now it's like, who do you know that's died, who has COVID, who has this, who's on lockdown. And when you get that over and over and over and over again, and then you're dealing with your own stuff and your own fears and your own anxieties, it can be a lot to handle. But I do it because I am clear-headed, clear-minded, and I can put things in perspective, list them from most important to not, and deal with the day. Because people are like, how do you have 5 animals, run a business, have a home, have a full career, do makeup for 7 hours in the bathroom? It's because I'm not smoking a pack of cigarettes a day and drinking and hungover. I'm living my life. And there's so many good things out of that.
Yeah, we think we're in our addiction, that we're living this very free, carefree life, when in reality that has control over how we lived. And now getting sober, this is our moment to actually truly live, because now
Yeah.
we're not dependent on anything to cope with our bullshit that we have to deal with in life. So, but I'm so thankful that you're here. We're coming up on an hour now, which is
Ah,
okay.
got a guy.
It's all good. So thank you again. So if anybody resonated with your story, how can they get a hold of you?
Um, how could they get a hold of? I mean, I have my Instagram. I don't do Facebook or anything like that, but it's Shannon Scissors, ShannonScizzors. And that's on Instagram, and you're going to see lots of scary makeup. So if blood and gore grosses you out, I would suggest not to go. But yeah, all my thoughts, all my original ideas, and yeah, check it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you again for listening to today's episode. Hit that follow button to be notified about new episodes every week. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Instagram at The Sober Unicorn Podcast, or on our website at thesoberunicornpodcast.com. There you will find our episodes, as well as our very own sober-owned shop, featuring products from small businesses that are sober-owned. And remember, everyone, don't be normal, be a unicorn, but better yet, be a sober unicorn.